Good evening. It is one of the most famous buildings in the world. It has stood on the banks of the River Seine for more than 800 years. Tonight, Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris is completely engulfed by fire. The flames appear to have started in the roof where extensive renovation work was being carried out. They quickly took hold. The cathedral's spire collapsed into the building. It's feared very little has been saved. Huge crowds gathered in the streets around it. Many were in tears. Notre Dame took 200 years to build. It's one of the greatest treasures of medieval architecture. Tonight, it lies in ruins. Our Paris correspondent Lucy Williamson reports.
It was, said the president, a part of France that burned today. A part that stood here for 800 years through war, revolution and religious unrest. Engulfed within an hour by flames. Its ancient towers, beacons for both residents and tourists, crumbling into the blaze. As its current guardian watched through tears.
This is a national disaster. I'm very upset. This cathedral is 850 years old, and to see the building fall to pieces, the spire fall down, just as we were renovating it, all I can do is pray.
400 firefighters circled the cathedral to tackle the blaze, their cranes stretching to reach its soaring roof. A complicated and fragile operation. Simply dousing the medieval structure with water was not an option, rescue experts said, because the building could collapse. To tackle the flames inside the building, firefighters had to climb up the towers. Nothing else could reach. The flames are slowly beginning to subside now, but the damage is just beginning to reveal itself. The destruction of this medieval symbol of Paris has left the city under a pall of shock and smoke. People packed into the streets around barely spoke, just watched. President Macron, arriving at the cathedral with France's Prime Minister, had no words to offer either. His face upturned in disbelief, as in prayer. Those who found the words for their impressions, one after the other, all said the same.
This is awful. It's terribly sad. It's terrifying. The fire is uncontrollable. I've been here for 1 hour and there's nothing we can do.
The deputy mayor of Paris confirmed the fire had started on the roof and quickly spread. The cause isn't clear. Police have begun an investigation. But some have questioned whether extensive renovation work currently underway here might have sparked this massive blaze. The task now is to assess the destruction inside the building. Its woodwork dating from the 13th century. Its statues destroyed once before by revolutionaries 2 centuries ago. Many things are said to be irreplaceable. Great art, cultural heritage, symbols of protection and hope. What word should we use when it's all of these? Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Paris.
Well, let's get the latest now live from Lucy in Paris. And Lucy, just extraordinary scenes in Paris tonight. Does it look like firefighters will be able to save anything of the building?
Well, you could see the scale of what they were up against. This was an incredibly complicated operation. Firefighters tackling it any way they could. Such an enormous structure. And not so long ago, we were being told that the whole wooden skeleton of Notre Dame was ablaze. There were real fears for the whole structure of the building, and particularly the North Tower, one of those big towers at the entrance to Notre Dame. There was real fears they wouldn't be able to save that. But the latest we're getting from the scene is that the basic stone structure now appears to be out of danger. They have managed to save at least that. The big question now, of course, is how much of the inside still remains.
Lucy Williamson with the latest there in Paris. Notre Dame sits in the very heart of Paris, on the Ile de la Cité, an island in the middle of the River Seine. The fire is believed to have started shortly before 7 o'clock local time this evening, shortly after the structure closed to the public. Firefighters say the blaze could be linked to ongoing restoration work. France is tonight mourning a cultural and historical loss. Fergal Keane reports now on the damage done to France's cultural fabric.
In Paris, the most desolate of skies, smoke and ruin and history billowing into the air.
Fire crews from across Paris have come here to save whatever they possibly can. And the striking thing, standing among the crowds on the banks of the Seine, is just the silence, the quiet of people stunned by the destruction of not just a great French cultural artefact, but of one that belonged to the world.
Notre Dame de Paris offered a vision of France that seemed eternal, even if the age of kings and emperors and powerful cardinals had long passed. It was built more than 800 years ago, when kings ruled by divine right. And grand and great cathedrals of stone and stained glass were designed to reach for the sublime.
So this is an absolutely cultural disaster for all of us, actually, not just the French, but also European significance. Paris had been the sort of hot cauldron of Gothic architecture from the 11th and 12th centuries, and it had influenced a whole lot of buildings in England, including Westminster Abbey and all our subsequent cathedrals.
Notre Dame survived Europe's devastating wars of religion and the age of revolution. It was a theatre of hubris. Napoleon was crowned emperor here by the Pope. At the end of World War II, the bells of Notre Dame pealed the hour of liberation. Its glories are a source of pride for the people of this city.
I speak to your English audience to share my immense sorrow, my immense pain in front of this catastrophe that has befallen Notre Dame. I have lived here for more than 30 years. My 3 children were baptized here. What the Germans did not destroy was ruined by a stupid fire.
Higher and higher it goes, reaching up.
The fear of a devastating fire was always present. This is the mid-1930s, when the Paris Fire Service drilled for such an eventuality. But it was a renovation in the modern age that proved catastrophic. These statues were moved for protection just last week. Tonight, Paris feels like a city that is mourning the loss of an essential part of itself. Fergal Keane, BBC News, Paris.
Well, as the fire took hold, world leaders began reacting to the terrible scenes. President Trump said it was so horrible to watch the massive fire. Theresa May said her thoughts were with the people of France. The Vatican has expressed its shock and sadness. Well, this is one of the latest pictures that we have got showing the true extent of the blaze inside. Virtually everything alight, as you can see. Let's go back now to Lucy Williamson, who is in Paris. And just looking at that image, you can see, I mean, it looks like there's going to be very little that is saved of Notre Dame.
Yes, and I think that's really beginning to sink in here in Paris. There has been all late afternoon into this evening a real sense of shock, of sadness here. But what really struck me was the silence and the feeling from people that this was a loss really beyond words. We've had the mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, saying there are no words strong enough to express the pain of watching Notre Dame burn. The Prime Minister talking about grief beyond words. And you mentioned there the Vatican. They expressed their disbelief at what had happened. And I think that the image that's really going to stay with me tonight is of ordinary people in the streets around Notre Dame gathering together, singing and praying.